The short-faced bears that once roamed North America belonged to the genus Arctodus. Two species were found on the continent during the Pleistocene: the lesser short-faced bear, Arctodus pristinus, which predominantly lived during the early Pleistocene, and the giant short-faced bear, Arctodus simus, which predominantly lived towards the end of the Pleistocene. Both species likely overlapped with each other, but Arctodus simus evolved from Arctodus pristinus. The bears were similar in appearance to today's bears, but considerably larger. The biggest was the giant short-faced bear, which could grow up to 950 kilograms, or 2,000 pounds in weight, had a shoulder height of 1.6 meters, or 5.2 feet, and when standing on its hind legs, could reach heights of 4 meters, or 13 feet. Although they are considered to have been omnivores like many of today's bears, they are thought to be the largest carnivorous land mammals that ever lived. Here, we ask the question: could short-faced bears survive nowadays? To answer this question, we need to consider the bear's habitat, climate, and diet, and compare these to what's available today. Firstly, habitat. The lesser short-faced bear, Arctodus pristinus, was largely found in today's Florida. It preferred to live in open grassland habitats that were largely dominated by longleaf pine flatwoods. As Florida's wet, forested habitat gave way to a drier, more open environment during the climatic shifts that occurred towards the middle of the Pleistocene, the lesser short-faced bears vanished. It is thought that the descendants, the giant short-faced bear, lived in a range of habitats from grasslands to tropical thorn shrub and woodland. In Mexico, it lived in an open forest dominated by low, bushy evergreen junipers. In California, the bear's habitat shifted from wetter mixed woodland, grassland, and marshes to more arid, mixed savannas as the Pleistocene continued. Most of Canada was covered in glaciers, but occasionally an ice-free corridor would emerge, allowing animals to migrate. During these times, Arctodus fossils have been found in northern Canada and Beringia, where some species such as lions, brown bears, and Homotherium became locally extinct. Arctodus remained. During the Pleistocene, it seems that the short-faced bears were a highly adaptable species. They survived and thrived in a wide and diverse range of habitats, and even as the habitats and climate shifted as the Pleistocene progressed, the bears continued to occupy the same niches. Today, conditions may be different from those of the Pleistocene, but there is a chance the short-faced bears could survive in the habitats available. As the climate warmed, the glaciers that covered much of North America began to retreat, leaving behind a landscape that was shaped by glacial deposits and erosion. In the warmer, ice-free climate, forests began to expand across much of North America, replacing grasslands and other habitats. Changes in precipitation have led to changes in river systems, with some rivers shifting their courses and others drying up completely. The short-faced bears occupied habitats that are present today. Woodlands and open grasslands are still found throughout North America and would provide the sort of suitable habitat for these prehistoric bears. So, let's now consider the climate. During the last glacial maximum, about 20,000 years ago, the global temperatures were about 6 degrees Celsius cooler than they are today. The world was a drier place, with a lot of the world's water locked up in glaciers. The sea levels were lower, and rainfall was half of what it is today. This created a different climate and environment compared to today, in which short-faced bears thrived. Their thick, shaggy coats helped keep them warm in the cooler temperatures. They would have had substantial fat reserves to survive the colder climates. However, there was less seasonality back then. Unlike today, there were less obvious seasons in North America. The adaptations that short-faced bears had to keep them warm may be too much for them if they lived today. Like some of their modern-day relatives, short-faced bears could overheat easily if they exert themselves or were exposed to hotter temperatures. This may mean that short-faced bears would change their geographical location to live in more northern regions where the temperatures are cooler. Fossils of Arctodus pristinus have been found mostly in Florida, but also in Kansas, South Carolina, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Mexico. It was most populous in the southeastern states. thereby avoiding competition with the black bears, which were largely found in the Northeast during the Pleistocene. What did the bears eat, and would they be able to find the same food today? It is largely accepted that the short-faced bear was omnivorous. It would have eaten a range of berries and plants as well as meat. The hunting strategy, however, is hotly debated. Some researchers have suggested that the long limbs of the short-faced bear were built for running speed. This gave it the name running bear. If this were true, then the animal could chase herbivores across open plains, hunting them down over long distances. But the immense size and heavy body of the bears suggest that, like today's brown bears, they weren't built for speed. They weren't agile, so were unlikely to chase after agile prey. The structure of the bear's backbone, as evidenced by fossil records, shows that they had little flexibility in the spine, and the way the vertebrae are positioned suggests that they were not quick at accelerating. Furthermore, the bears had a plantigrade gait, meaning that their entire foot was placed on the ground when walking or running. Faster predators tend to sprint on their toes, with their heels lifted off the ground. All this leads to the conclusion that the bears didn't chase their prey. A suggestion has been put forward that the prehistoric bears were scavengers. Their fossilized teeth have shown wear and tear, reminiscent of bone cracking. This could also explain their large body size, which would have been used to defend carcasses that they came across. However, the dentition of fossilized short-faced bears is not as worn as that of known scavengers, such as hyenas. The dentition, such as the broad, flat molars, and the structure of the mandibular muscles, suggest that the short-faced bears were more herbivorous than omnivorous. The plant material they consumed was typically coarse and unselectively grazed. Of course, like many modern bears, it is still assumed that short-faced bears ate meat. Whether they actively hunted the prey is a topic for debate, but tooth marks on prey such as ground sloths and proboscideans confirm that they were at least partly omnivorous. The flora and fauna of North America have changed since the Pleistocene. Indeed, the climate changes, which resulted in a huge shift in the plant species, are thought to be largely responsible for the mass extinction of the megafauna, including short-faced bears. The giant short-faced bear, Arctodus simus, fed on C3 vegetation such as leaves, stems, bark, and flowers from trees, as well as shrubs and grasses. They also consumed the prey species that browsed this vegetation, such as deer, camelids, tapir, bison, and ground sloths. Some scientists have suggested that the changing vegetation may have played a role in the extinction of some megafauna species. For example, some species may have been better adapted to the open grasslands of the Ice Age and may have struggled to compete in the new forested environments. So, could the flora found there today support short-faced bears? It's difficult to say. It depends on how adaptable the species is. There would certainly be enough vegetation to feed these immense beasts, but whether their digestive systems would be able to cope with a new, unfamiliar type of vegetation is another question. Like modern-day black and brown bears, the short-faced bear would be able to prey or scavenge upon the likes of moose or elk. They may also be able to catch and feed on fish like some of today's bears. Would there be enough prey to feed these giant bears today? Depending on their population size, there could be, in certain areas. They may compete with bears that already inhabit the ecosystem, such as North America's brown and black bears and Canada's polar bears. Interestingly, where short-faced bears lived alongside brown bears, particularly in Beringia or Alaska, the smaller, less dominant brown bears were largely herbivorous. The short-faced bears outcompeted their smaller counterparts for prime prey, consuming grazing animals and probably also fish. The same is true for today's brown and black bears. Where brown bears are absent, black bears consume more meat and fish in their diet. But when brown bears inhabit the same area, black bears are less able to fish for salmon and have much smaller territorial ranges. Fossil evidence of Arctodus is quite sparse compared to other predators that lived at the same time. As a result, it is thought that these bears lived in low population densities, which would suit them if they survived today. With an ever-shrinking habitat available to them and fewer food resources, lower population densities could serve them well in today's climate. It seems that Arctodus was an adaptable animal. From the evidence presented from fossil studies, it lived in a wide range of habitats and consumed a rich and varied diet. So why did it become extinct like the other megafauna? Arctodus survived in the Pleistocene-Holocene boundary. It was one of the last species of megafauna to become extinct during the Quaternary extinction event that removed between 30 and 40 genera from North America. Climate change caused a shift in vegetation. It led to less nutritional plant matter, which is one of the main reasons some species struggled to survive. For Arctodus, however, the dental wear and tear from the fossilized remains don't seem to suggest the genus went hungry. It is thought that short-faced bears had very low genetic diversity. Fossilized specimens found in Ohio were very closely related to specimens found in Beringia, which had been isolated for tens of thousands of years. With a low genetic diversity, the genus was more vulnerable to environmental changes. Although food shortages don't appear to be to blame for the bear's demise, changes in the nutritional quality of the vegetation, along with changes in the habitat, could have attributed to their extinction. Small population sizes and a lack of fresh genes coming into the population would have made them vulnerable to extinction. All in all, it seems that there is a possibility that short-faced bears could survive nowadays. They have a similar lifestyle to today's brown and black bears, occupying similar niches and consuming a similar omnivorous diet. However, as they were unable to adapt to the changing environment that was reminiscent of the Pleistocene-Holocene boundary, they would unlikely be able to survive in the rapidly changing world of today. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. You can also leave a comment with what you would like to see in the following videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time.